Is Trump quietly readying a secret weapon against Iran as diplomacy falters? After a mystery launcher was spotted on a U.S. Navy destroyer? Another apparent secret from a U.S. warship now seems to be slipping into public view, even as tension over the Strait of Hormuz spiral again? A mystery launcher has now been spotted on a U.S. Navy destroyer, just as fears grow that the conflict could reignite. A mystery launcher has been spotted on the USS Carl M, Levin, raising fresh questions about whether the U.S. Navy is quietly testing a new defensive or multi-role capability aboard one of its frontline destroyers. The war zone made the claim by citing an image taken on March 29 at Pearl Harbor in Hawaii, where the USS Carl M. Levin was seen with the unusual launcher mounted on board. The new launcher appeared on the U.S. Navy destroyer USS Carl M. Levin in that Pearl Harbor image, immediately drawing attention because it did not match any readily identifiable system already known to be in service. The unidentified launcher seen aboard the USS Carl M. Levin is being viewed as a possible sign of a fresh weapons test by the U.S. Navy, especially as the service looks for faster and more flexible responses to new battlefield threats. According to the war zone, the USS Carl M. Levin sighting points to a possible new close-range defense option for the Navy, one that could strengthen ship protection against rapidly emerging dangers. The mystery launcher on the Burke-class destroyer also appears to align with the U.S. Navy's evolving anti-drone push, as warships increasingly face pressure to counter cheap and fast-moving aerial threats. The new destroyer launcher may be tied to expanding shipboard counter-drone defenses, the war zone suggested, reflecting a broader Pentagon effort to field more affordable and scalable intercept solutions. The USS Carl M. Levin's new launcher may also reflect lessons learned from Red Sea drone attacks, where American and Allied ships have had to respond repeatedly to persistent unmanned threats. The unknown launcher on the warship may also be connected to the Pentagon's Counter-Next effort, which is focused on developing advanced systems for defeating drones in complex operational environments. The war zone reported that the weapon could be linked to the White Spike Interceptor, a system being evaluated under Pentagon drone defense testing as part of the search for next-generation counter-UAS options. The mystery launcher also hints at possible Arleigh Burke upgrades in response to emerging threats, suggesting the Navy is adapting its destroyers more rapidly as the operational environment changes. The new destroyer launcher could potentially support interceptors, drones, decoys, or other countermeasures, which would make it a flexible addition to shipboard defense architecture. The move underscores that the U.S. Navy is pushing toward a next-generation ship defense system, with new launch concepts likely playing a central role in that transition. This revelation came amid a deadlock between the United States and Iran after the Islamabad talks failed to produce a breakthrough, leaving major security concerns unresolved. The Strait of Hormuz was among the key issues on which both sides could not reach mutual agreement, making it one of the central sticking points in the failed negotiations. No date or venue has yet been fixed for the next round of talks, according to reports citing Tasneem news agency, after the Islamabad meeting ended without an agreement. Iran has also signaled it has no plans for further talks for now, with reports saying Tehran believes the U.S. was looking for an excuse to walk away from the negotiations. Iranian source said, I quote, "The Americans needed the negotiation for their lost face in the international arena and were unwilling to lower their expectations despite the defeat and stalemate in the war with Iran. Iran has no plans for the next round of talks." Unquote. Trump's deputy, J.D. Vance, claimed that Iran's nuclear program was one of the main deterrent issues in the talks, making it clear that Washington still sees Tehran's atomic ambitions as a central obstacle to any agreement. Iran, meanwhile, argued that Trump sent the United States to the negotiating table only after failing to seize control of its uranium, framing the talks as proof that military pressure had not achieved Washington's goals. Subsequently, the top U.S. negotiator left Pakistan after the talks failed to produce a deal, underscoring the breakdown of what had been a closely watched round of high-stakes diplomacy. U.S. Vice President Vance announced that no deal could be reached, but he described that outcome as bad news for Iran, signaling that Washington still wanted to project confidence despite the impasse. Before Vance made those remarks, the Iranian government's handle on X had said that negotiations would continue despite remaining differences, indicating that Tehran was publicly trying to keep the door open even as positions stayed far apart.
Good morning, everybody, and let me say a couple of notes of appreciation. First of all, to the Prime Minister of Pakistan and to Field Marshal Munir, who were both incredible hosts. And whatever shortcomings in the negotiation, it wasn't because of the Pakistanis, who did an amazing job and really tried to help us and the Iranians bridge the gap and get to a deal. We have been at it now for 21 hours, and we've had a number of substantive discussions with the Iranians. That's the good news. The bad news is that we have not reached an agreement, and I think that's bad news for Iran much more than it's bad news for the United States of America. So we go back to the United States having not come to an agreement. We've made very clear what our red lines are, what things we're willing to accommodate them on, and what things we're not willing to accommodate them on. And we've made that as clear as we possibly could, and they have chosen not to accept our terms. Questions?
Sir, Nick Robertson from CNN. Precisely what have they rejected here? Can you help us understand it a little bit?
Well, I won't go into all the details because I don't want to negotiate in public after we've negotiated for 21 hours in private. But the simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations. Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon, not just now, not just 2 years from now, but for the long term? We haven't seen that yet. We hope that we will. Jen?
Was there a framework on anything? And also, did the Iranian frozen assets come up? And did you reach any conclusions on those frozen assets?
We talked about all those issues, Jen, and we talked about a number of issues beyond that. And so certainly those things came up. But again, we just could not get to a situation where the Iranians were willing to accept our terms. I think that we were quite flexible. We were quite accommodating. The president told us, you need to come here in good faith and make your best effort to get a deal. We did that. And unfortunately, we weren't able to make any headway. Preston.
Mr. Vice President, how often did you communicate with President Trump throughout the negotiations? There were reports that there were multiple rounds, where there were breaks in between negotiations. How often did you communicate with the president throughout those rounds, and what was he saying as you were going through these negotiations that you said fell short?
Yeah, obviously we were talking to the president consistently. I don't know how many times we talked to him, a half dozen times, a dozen times over the past 21 hours. We obviously also talked to Admiral Cooper, to Pete, to Marco, to the entire national security team. We talked to Scott Bessent a number of times. So look, we were constantly in communication with the team because we were negotiating in good faith. And we leave here with a very simple proposal, a method of understanding that is our final and best offer. We'll see if the Iranians accept it. Thank you.